Something really cool happens when you blend peanuts to make peanut butter. Let me show you. Right now, everything in here is solid, right? Like every peanut is solid. Okay, so let's see what happens when we start blending it. Okay, so this is the first step. Right now, pretty much what we did is that we broke down the peanuts, but I mean everything is still solid. It's just grinded down. It's just we turned it into dust, but everything is still solid. So let's continue and see what happens. Now is when we begin to see changes, because look, we can see that even though the peanuts are still grinded down, they are starting to clump together. If you let me move the camera for just a second and show you inside. You can see how everything is starting to form these clumps. Okay, keep that in mind. This is important. Now we see how, before there were just a bunch of tiny clumps everywhere, but now, check this out. Now we have pretty much, we have one and two big clumps and a little other little clumps to the sides, but everything is starting to coalesce in this single clump. So it's interesting. We went from the peanuts being solid to being dust. And now they are starting to, I don't know, like clump together into another solid, right? So let's see what happens when we continue. Check this out. There has been another change. Now, pretty much like the clumps we saw before are starting to, the little clumps from before are starting to disappear, and everything is just forming into this single giant mass. We are near the end. There's, I think, just one more transformation left. Oh, there, we got it. I was afraid I was gonna miss it. I wasn't sure how long till it formed. There it is, the mega clump. Pretty much all the peanut mass here has come together into one singular mass. Interesting, right? And this always happens, like it always forms this giant mass, but it only lasts for a second, because you're going to see what happens when we continue blending it. But yeah, that's the mega clump. And I really wanted to get it on camera and show it to you. Now let's see what happens to the mega clump. There it is, and now? Just a little bit more. Yeah, I think. And that's it. The clump, check it out. Now the clump disappeared, and it doesn't matter how much the blades move, nothing changes anymore. The blades move and move, but there isn't anything to blend anymore, because now this isn't a solid. It has now become a liquid, a very dense liquid, but a liquid nonetheless, and that's why the blades cannot cut through it, because it just moves away from the blades. And so what you just saw is a phase change, just like when water becomes a solid. But I mean, everyone knows like the phase changes in the case of water. Like water goes from a liquid, solid, a gas, blah, blah, blah. But what about peanuts? We have peanuts that began as solid. Let me grab some more peanuts to show you. So the peanuts began as something solid. And then we grinded them down, and that wasn't really another state of matter, right? Like, we began with peanuts, and then we grinded them, and then after being grinded, they started forming those clumps. That was a process of crystallization. What happens in a crystal, for example, well, come to think of it, like this glass, or in metals like these ones, or these ones, what happens is that they melt the metal, like it becomes liquid. Then they put it in a container, and as it starts cooling, you have these nucleation centers. You have places in the liquid. Basically, that's what we had, right? We had all of this peanut dust, and there were some nucleation centers, and those were the clumps that we saw. And then everything starts becoming solid around those nucleation centers until eventually everything becomes solid. And that was the mega clump we saw. But the funny thing is that here we are seeing those changes not because of temperature, but because of the movement of the blades. Here, the blades put energy into the system, and that energy causes a phase change. And it's interesting because, for example, when metals get cooler, when they lose energy, they become solids. And when they gain energy, when they become liquid, when they gain energy, when they become hotter, they become liquid. But here with peanuts, when we put energy into the system, at first it became some sort of solid, like the dust, or maybe we could call it some sort of liquid. But then with more energy, it became solid again. And then as we continued inputting energy into the system with the blades, it became liquid once more. And so that shows you how phase changes aren't really like, oh yeah, when something becomes hotter, it becomes a liquid, or when something gets cooler, it becomes a solid. Here we saw how something became a solid as it gained more energy, and then a liquid as it continued to gain energy. And so, yeah, this is something really cool. And you can see it for yourself. If you have a blender like this, you can start blending some peanuts. And you can see these phase changes by yourself. And then you can add some things to the peanuts. For example, you can add some olive oil or some other, or sugar and stuff like that. And you can see how the process changes slightly. And I don't know, you can try to make your own experiments. And if you find something interesting, then show it to me. And remember, what happens here is this is an exception. Nature is full of phase changes that don't follow our expectations that we have from water, right? Because water has trained us to expect that everything that gets cooler becomes a solid, and everything that gets hotter becomes a liquid. But that's not a rule in nature. Nature has a ton of exceptions like this. And if you find one of these that is interesting, something that you can replicate in your house, please show it to me. And I don't know. Thanks for watching, and I hope you like this video. Goodbye.